Jim Walsh has over 40 years' experience in public relations. I wanted to get his insights into how companies are handling communications during the current COVID-19 crisis.
Well, IPREX is probably one of the largest networks in the world on a global basis. It has something like 110 offices around the world, 1,800 staff, turnover of about $420 million. Walsh PR joined it in 1998. It allows us to promote ourselves as part of an international organization, which is great in terms of marketing. And most importantly of all, it is a brilliant educational tool for us to use with our staff and indeed to gather intelligence for our clients, generate a lot of connections around the world. So basically you can pick up the phone at a moment's notice and find out what's happening in any part of the country. And in more recent years, the Walsh PR Managing Director, Caroline Haywood, has actually become very involved as well and has chaired some committees in IPREX. So all in all, it's a great resource, and particularly at the moment with COVID-19.
COVID-19 strikes and suddenly you find that, I presume, you're trying to find out what are other people doing in their consultancies, how are they coping?
The organization moved very fast and it set up a number of fora. So we have regular forums for the owners. I should say the partners in IPREX are all independent consultancies, all by and large entrepreneurs who run their own businesses separately. But in a case like this, it allowed us to come together. It allows the partners and senior managers to gather regularly in fora around the world. It created other forums for staff members who could join. It set up a number of expert groups. So we've had video conferencing with the HR experts, for example, around the world. So by and large, it moved very quickly, and it set up gave us all the ability to talk to each other on any topic. And of course, our networking, our intranet on the website is also a benefit. We have a resource center there. It's come into its own as a benefit, particularly for an independent company during COVID-19.
And did you find, Jim, that there were differences in the way consultancies handled this sudden pandemic?
By and large, it was pretty much the same. There were some differences in terms of timing. The differences came about based on the company's clients and the sectors that clients were working in. Some businesses who had, for example, worked in the hospitality or tourism business. We had one partner, unfortunately, who was very much involved in that area, and their business went down to something like 10% of turnover, literally overnight. But one of the interesting things that happened is communications didn't take front line right from the beginning. Most organizations were more concerned with their operations. They had to make quick decisions on what they would do with staff, what they would do with product, how they would get their distribution channels working. And communications came a little bit more down the line than it would normally do in the case of a particular crisis. How are we going to keep people busy? How are we going to do business? Where are we going to get new business? And so on. All of that happened. But what was interesting about COVID-19, as distinct from, I might call them normal crises, I mean, most companies now have crisis management and business continuity, crisis communications plan, and they're in place. But what happens with what had been happening to now with most crises, the crisis was within a defined time period. It was caused by maybe an accident, maybe it was a HR issue, maybe it was a product recall, but it happened, and there was almost, cliche to say there was a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now suddenly we were faced with a situation where we knew it was happening, we didn't know how long it was going to last, and we didn't know when the end was going to be in sight. So that brought a different dimension. And for PR companies, it meant that they had to really look in detail at what their clients were going to do, and were led by their clients, who they had to be actually, and then help the client communicate. And that happened in many different ways, from promoting brands to lobbying, to running online events, to helping companies with their social media work. So So it became a very active time for many PR consultants all over the world. The PR business, we were very lucky. Working in lockdown, working in isolation, if you like, working remotely is something that came quite naturally to us. That's the way our business is until you're doing an event when you need a whole lot of people.
Anything you were doing with brands would pretty much stop in this crisis. It obviously didn't.
They had to look and see what is the most important thing to us. So in our particular case at Walsh PR, we're very lucky. We worked with people like Flavins, the porridge people. And as it happened, their strategy or one of their pillars is all about wellness and health and so on. So we were able to help them in devising programs online that, like yoga classes, for example, that was very much in keeping with what they were doing. Another client was mymilkman.ie, which obviously came into its own during the lockdown. Companies and brands behaved during COVID-19 will be remembered. They'd be remembered by people, those who behaved very well, those who didn't. So you had a company on one hand that was making ventilators or saying that they were making ventilators. In this particular case, they didn't happen because they weren't able to sell the ventilators. But this was an arms company with 95 billion turnover. When the normal course of events are supplying arms, now during COVID-19, they suddenly turned to be nice, caring people. And people remember that poor Victoria Beckham, on the one hand, multi-million dollar business, but then claiming wage subsidies. Unfortunately, here in Ireland, we had Keelings, through, I believe, no fault of their own, received a lot of abuse for bringing in fruit pickers. But I don't know Keelings, I don't work for Keelings, but I really believe, and this was an interesting point, that they did what they believed was right, and which they believed had the authority of the government. What they missed slightly was the timing in reacting to the social media onslaught they received. And I suspect that was because they thought they were in the right. And that raises a very interesting topic of you might be in the right, but public perception in a particular setting would see it very differently. It may have been, and this very often happens, that the professional communicators, PR people, are not brought in early enough. And I'm not saying it happened or didn't happen in this case, because I don't know even if they were using professionals, but the point is that very often companies get so caught up in the operation and what they're doing that they forget to communicate to publics. And that's the value of professional communications, professional PR, in that it provides that independent and outside look. PR, is actually based on truth and honesty, and communicating and saving your reputation. Reputation management has to be based on that, and you cannot suddenly jump from one thing to another. If you're seen as one type of company doing a particular service or providing a particular product, you cannot overnight try and turn yourself into something you're not. It takes a long time to build up a reputation, and you can damage that reputation very quickly nowadays with the way social media spreads misinformation. The health professionals and from the government, but particularly the health professionals, was simply first class. Right from the start, and even from design, advertising, right from the start, you knew everything. There was a very clear graphic. The message was wash your hands, sneeze into your elbows, keep your social distance. And that was repeated over and over and over again. And then you knew the yellow was there. You knew it was all about COVID-19, which is on ad. Let the health professionals take from the stage from the very beginning. We didn't have simply politicians as they had in the UK coming out and telling us. And it comes back to the whole issue of trust. We trust certain groups of people more than others. So getting the trusted group out in front of house, selling the message, was clearly a great communication strategy. But I think there's going to be a trend towards looking for good professional journalism and investigative journalism, the likes of a Currency, for example, who do in-depth business stories. I think that there's a place for that type of journalism.
Tell me how big an issue internal communications has become for your clients.
It is and it isn't. I mean, that's a lot of time now just at the moment, but that's going to ease up over the next few months. And then we're going to be back to the need for communicating not only with employees, but with local community, with politicians. Lobbying, is going, although lobbying, interesting enough, hasn't really stopped. In fact, there's been a bigger need for it, and there's been a lot of companies fighting and a lot of organizations fighting to be classified as an essential services in order to get themselves working again very
back
quickly.
Working, yeah.
So yes, there is going to be a bigger emphasis. And one of the reasons there's going to be a bigger emphasis on communication with employees is that you're still going to have quite a lot of people working remotely. I think that's definitely going to be the big change. No matter what business you're in, every business will be looking at how they can allow people to work remotely. The importance of communications is going to be seen very definitely. And alongside that, as I mentioned earlier on, the benefit of having an independent and an outside voice that can keep you up to speed with what the world is saying about you, and at the same time keep you informed of what the right way to go about and your business, and to take elements of your business to help your reputation. The role of IPREX will probably remain the same. It's important at the moment, and I think it'll be important that people get that professional view, if you like, and that the benefit of us as Walsh PR talking to our IPREX peers is that we're getting independent advice as well. I think communications has really come into its own through COVID-19, or has at least made people aware of the need and the benefit of communicating. And that means giving information, giving it truthfully, giving it honestly.
And looking to the future, Jim, what are the 2 or 3 key tips that you would give businesses who are looking to begin to come back out of COVID now?
Well, the first thing obviously is with their staff. Communicating exactly what they're going to do, when they're going to return, how they're going to return, what actions they're going to take when they do return. That'll be the first. The second would be, I think, talking to their customers, their clients, the people with them, telling them that they're back.
Jim Walsh, thank you so much for that. I really enjoyed that chat. There were 4 key takeaways for me from that interview. The first was the need for independent, external, professional advice and the benefit that brings to a client. The second was the need to constantly manage and monitor reputation. The third was a series of really good hints and tips that Jim gave for corporates who are re-emerging into what is becoming the new normal. And the fourth, and I think probably the most interesting takeaway, was that communications in this mid-COVID, post-COVID society has moved front and centre. Communications is now centrally important to every single organisation and will continue to be so for the future. Good news for PR practitioners and anybody working in the comms environment. Essential online training solutions for communications professionals. The PR Training Academy.